Good morning and welcome to spring semester of American Literature at Journey. I apologize for the darkness of the video. I'm not a video producer. I'll keep this short and sweet. We'll be doing most of our remote learning through assignments that you will email me. And you can always call me and let me know if you want to set up a Zoom meeting if you have questions, or if you want to text me any kind of messages, emails, that will work. But let's get started. You're going to be reading The Great Gatsby. And in order to read it intelligently, I'm going to give you a little bit of historical background. The Great Gatsby is considered Fitzgerald's finest work and one of the best novels in all of American literature. It's also short. Most good American novels are short. Americans seem to have a shorter attention span than the British or the Russians. The time period is the Jazz Age, and it was Fitzgerald himself who gave the name the Jazz Age to this time. That's also called in some of your history books the Roaring Twenties. This is the time period that came right after World War I. Of course, they didn't call it World War I because they didn't know that World War I was setting up World War II. They referred to it as the Great War. So if you read books in the time period of the first half of the 1900s, if they talk about the Great War, they're talking about what we now call World War I, which ended in November of 1918. In 1919, we had the Prohibition Amendment, which prohibited the sale and consumption of any alcoholic beverages within the United States at all. This also set up the time of Al Capone, the gangsters, moonshiners who made what we call bootleg whiskey at home and then sold it, because the rich people were always able to get around the law. They would set up secret speakeasies, they called them, and they would go in and have their parties and have their alcohol. The Prohibition Amendment is not part of our Constitution now. Of course, it was repealed. And then in the next year, 1920, we had the Women's Suffrage Amendment. This doesn't mean women had to suffer more. It means women were allowed to vote. Suffrage means the right to vote. Don't ask me why. I would have picked a different word to not cause confusion. But women got the vote in 1920. So my great-grandmother was not able to vote until after she had born all of her children, and most of them were grown up. The census in 1920 also showed that for the first time, there were more Americans living in towns and cities than there were living in rural America. Up to this point, America had been majority rural farming communities. In 1923, the president, Warren Harding, died, and Calvin Coolidge became president. He's known as Silent Cal. And this was a time when businesses prospered, the government pretty much kept hands off of everything, and the stock market boomed. We call that a bull market. A bear market means your stocks are going down in value. A bear market means they're going up in value. Or a bull market means they're going up in value. So there was a big bull market. A handful of people in the cities were getting incredibly rich, but all of their riches dissolved when the stock market crashed in 1929. And the crash in 1929, in October of that year, was what set up the Great Depression. So that's the time period during which Fitzgerald lived and wrote. His wife, in fact, Zelda, is often considered the original flapper. The flappers were the women who suddenly were wearing shockingly short skirts and dancing things like the Charleston and going to these speakeasies. They were the party girls of the early 1900s. That's the historical setting for The Great Gatsby. The geographical setting is Long Island, New York. If you look at a map, New York, down in the corner, there's a tiny island, which is Manhattan, which is where downtown New York City is. And then you have a Long Island, which is why it's named Long Island. And this is a more suburban kind of area of New York. And that is the geographical setting for The Great Gatsby. So your assignment is going to be to read the first 2 chapters. And as you read the entire book, your continuing assignment will be to keep recording facts as you learn them about Gatsby. And questions you still have, like why does he do that? Or where did he really come from? Or is he telling the truth? So record these facts, and then as you read, you may suddenly realize you need to cross out some of your facts, because we'll find out that Gatsby's story is complicated and he's not completely forthcoming with it. Also, as you read the book, on another sheet of paper, I want you to record unfamiliar words and learn their meanings. F. Scott Fitzgerald had a fantastic vocabulary, and this is a wonderful opportunity to add to your vocabulary. It'll help you when you're taking PSATs and SATs and ACTs, and it'll just help you in your general writing. And instead of saying very, 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 very something, you can substitute one really precise word. That's one of the reasons Fitzgerald was able to write a great novel in so few pages. Every word that he uses is very carefully chosen. That's the advantage of having a big vocabulary. The bigger your vocabulary, the better your chance of finding just the right word for everything you need to write or say. That is all I have for you right now. I want you to read and enjoy. And of course, it's all right if you get going and you want to read ahead or you want to read the entire book at one sitting. That's okay. Just know that we will discuss it in pieces. But I don't want you to feel like I really want to know what happens next. But she didn't tell me I could read that chapter. No, you can always read ahead. I always hated when teachers would say we could only read what they told us to read. And true confessions, I would read it anyway and then just try to play dumb. But you don't have to do that. If you read the whole book, that's wonderful. We will just go back and discuss it a couple of chapters a week until we finished it. So I look forward to hearing from you. If you have any questions or if you have some great thing that you just thought of that you want to share, I'd love to hear it. You can text me. And make sure you keep up with these fact sheets. We want to share those when we go live or when we get back into the classroom. I want to share what we found out about him, maybe have some theories about who Gatsby really is, what he really does, how he really got his money. And I'll look forward to that in the future. So keep up with your assignments, read those first 2 chapters, and I'll be in touch.